Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I'm here today to talk about data centers and the executive action I'll be taking in a few moments to put strict guardrails in place on proposed projects to rein in data center developers who are trying to run over our local communities and to protect Pennsylvanians from higher costs. I think it's important to take an honest look at how quickly data center development has moved over the last year. This technology is obviously moving quite rapidly. Last summer, I announced two projects that will bring thousands of new jobs and over $20 billion of investment to Pennsylvania in Salem Township, in Luzerne County, and in Falls Township in Bucks County. Since then, we have seen an unacceptable number of speculative proposals for data center development that is swamping our Commonwealth, many of them led by developers who have no regard for local communities. Local leaders like Hampton Township Commissioner John Michael Smith, who joins us here today, along with Dave Sanko, the president of PSATS, who you will hear from in a few moments. Well, they know this reality firsthand, as do thousands of local officials across our Commonwealth. Today, there are reports of more than 100 data center proposals under discussion here in our Commonwealth. Most of those proposals are completely speculative, and many of them haven't even taken the formal steps to apply to the Commonwealth, and they'll never be built. They lack detailed plans, they have insufficient financing, they don't have access to electricity that they actually need to build these data centers. They have no agreements with tech companies to use the space should it be built. While there are no AI data centers up and running right now in Pennsylvania, and only 5 have the permits that they would need to even begin operating, these speculators are nevertheless scaring our communities, being aggressive with township officials, bullying our neighbors, our fellow Pennsylvanians, and refusing to listen to the people. And they are threatening to fundamentally change the character of our communities. As your governor, it is my job to listen and to use my authority to accomplish things for the people of Pennsylvania, to protect the people of Pennsylvania. And I have. Earlier this year, in my budget address, I introduced my grid requirements, strict protections that require data centers to bring their own power and pay for all of the costs associated with that electricity. Be transparent with the local community, hire local workers, and provide benefits to the local community, and to protect our air and our water. The House passed those grid requirements as legislation, importantly on a bipartisan basis, to put those standards in place. The Senate has refused to even bring it up for a vote. In fact, the Senate Majority Leader even said that he has no intention of taking any legislative action to regulate data center development in Pennsylvania. The absence of legislative approval has left me with no other option but to protect the people of Pennsylvania by taking executive action today to put the strictest guardrails in the nation in place to stop these predatory developers and these bad proposals from infecting our Commonwealth. I've heard loud and clear from the good people of Pennsylvania as I've traveled across our Commonwealth. And I'm here to say today that we will not be bullied by these developers. We will not be bulldozed by the lawyers for these big tech companies. That will not happen here in the Commonwealth. We have a long history in Pennsylvania of industry running roughshod over our communities to make a buck. That stops with me. I went to Archibald in Lackawanna County earlier this year. I listened to neighbors talk about where 6 data center campuses, made up of about 51 giant warehouses, have been proposed. in a single borough of 7,500 people, roughly 17 square miles. I sat in Representative Mullen's office and listened intently to concerned residents. And then I walked the left field line of Eddie Stayback Park, that left field line where parents should gather to watch their kids play Little League. Instead, that's where the corner of one of those data centers was to be built. Archbald is one of the many communities across Pennsylvania who are experiencing this. We're also seeing it where my family's from, in Montgomery County, where one developer is trying to bully his way into forcing data center projects through local opposition from the community and opposition from local elected officials. Instead of actually respecting those residents, of listening to them, of understanding their concerns and trying to work with them, the developer instead is trying to sue his way into building those data centers. And in its place, he is creating a whole lot of chaos. And he's stoking a lot of fear and angst amongst the community, even though he has no realistic path to getting power to any of these sites anytime soon. Here's something else he has no realistic path of getting, and that is my support. I'm a hell no on that project. I'm a hell no on many other projects across Pennsylvania, and they will not happen on my watch. Archbald and Monco, well, they're just two examples of the dozens of communities across Pennsylvania who are being overrun and overwhelmed by developers who don't give a damn about us and think that they can have their way. Well, today, I am formally putting them on notice. In a few moments, I will sign that executive order to put in place the nation's strictest guardrails on AI data centers. Guardrails that will hold these greedy developers accountable, that will stop bad projects, and put more power back into the hands of the local communities. Starting today, AI data center developers who want to do business in our Commonwealth must respect our communities and abide by these stringent requirements. And if they can't agree to do that, well, they should stop considering Pennsylvania as a home for their project. I want to be clear, these are not voluntary standards. These are legally binding requirements in order to operate in the Commonwealth. And here's how it will work. First, developers will be required to provide a notice of intent to comply with the grid requirements. Second, they'll be required to present their detailed plans to Secretary Shirley and her incredible team at DEP, who will scrutinize them and ensure that they are sufficient. And third, these developers must sign a legally binding consent order locking them into these grid requirements and setting strict penalties if they fail to comply. Now, let me remind you what those requirements are. First, developers must bring their own power and pay for all of the costs associated with that electricity. They will not be permitted to saddle homeowners and businesses with the added costs of their development. And they must get increasingly significant portion of that power from clean energy sources like solar, advanced nuclear, and battery storage. That's something I expect you will hear more about from Dewan Robinson, the managing director of the NRDC, in a few moments. Second, they must respect our local communities by being transparent with the community, by hiring locally, and by offering a robust community benefits agreement. And importantly, they must earn local legal approval before they can work with us. Let me put that succinctly. If the local community doesn't approve a project, the state won't approve it either. And third, developers must meet the constitutional obligation under Article 1, Section 27, which guarantees each and every Pennsylvanian the right to clean air and to pure water. That is fundamental to our Commonwealth, and they must commit to the highest standards of environmental protection. If a developer refuses to comply with these requirements, they will have no pathway of getting the necessary approvals needed to build a data center in Pennsylvania. Let me repeat, if a developer refuses to comply with those requirements, they will have no pathway of getting the necessary approvals to build a data center in Pennsylvania. And they will be disqualified from receiving the existing exemption on sales tax on data center equipment that was put in place 2 years prior to me being elected as your governor. These are the wealthiest companies in the world. They shouldn't get a tax break for gouging our communities. This executive order takes additional steps beyond making our grid requirements now legally enforceable. Effective immediately, I am removing all data center projects from the fast-track permitting program. And this executive order makes any future data center project ineligible for fast track. One thing that has become abundantly clear to me from listening to Pennsylvanians is that while fast track permitting has proven to be an incredible asset to helping us land major economic development projects like Eli Lilly in the Lehigh Valley and the Bellwether District in Philadelphia that is seeing rapid growth, what's become clear to me is that it is not right for these kinds of data center developments. The feedback I've gotten from people in their communities, well, that has really shaped my perspective on this matter. And while curtailing the speed of projects is important, ending the secrecy is important as well. Too often times, developers refuse to even give basic information to neighbors, like which tech company will occupy the AI data center or where the power will come from. Well, that practice ends today. In this executive order, I'm making clear that non-disclosure agreements will not be permissible for data center projects. It is important that developers understand they need to be open on every single detail with our communities. And if they won't be, well, they are not welcome to do business in Pennsylvania. Additionally, I am directing my new special counsel on energy affordability to engage with the Pennsylvania Utility Commission and help establish rules and procedures that ensure Pennsylvanians are protected from the demand that data centers put on our energy grid. Patrick Cicero, who you'll hear from in a few moments, who I worked with in the Attorney General's office, works hard to protect consumers every day. Specifically, we are going to ensure that any infrastructure costs caused by data centers are paid by the AI data centers, not by a Pennsylvania homeowner or a business owner, even if a data center ultimately closes and can't pay. No one's utility bill should go up because these wealthy companies don't pay their fair share. They should pay for every penny of electricity that they need. And if emergency strikes, hear me on this, the energy demand becomes higher than the grid can supply, data centers will be the first ones knocked off, not grandma or grandpa in their homes. You'll hear more about this from our outstanding PUC Chairman DeFrank, who I'm pleased is here with us today, and I'm proud that he has endorsed this executive order. Taken together, these steps will effectively block objectionable, unwarranted, and burdensome data center projects throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I'm using the full weight of my executive authority to put in place immediate protections for the people of Pennsylvania against bad faith developers of AI data centers. To the good people of Pennsylvania who have taken the time to talk to me in your communities, at your rest stops, at coffee shops, on walking trails, and at ball games. Those who have texted me, and shared with me your thoughtful concerns online. I want you to know I hear you, and I listened. And I also want you to know that I thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts with me, to give me your input. And your input was heard, and it was considered. I know you want the right to weigh in on decisions about what your community looks like going forward, and this executive order allows for that. I know you want the right to be able to weigh in on what kind of community you raise your children in. This executive order puts that power back in our local communities. I know you want the right to be able to say no to bad projects and developers who don't listen to your concerns, who treat you with disrespect, who try to raise your utility costs or pollute your resources. This executive order returns that power to the people. Today, with this executive order, I'm putting these developers on notice and letting them know that we will not let them bully my fellow Pennsylvanians. We will not let them disregard your constitutional right to clean air and to pure water. And we will not let them drive up your utility bills. If these companies want to do business here, they need to comply with now the strictest guardrails in the nation on data center development. And that starts today. Thank you for your attention. And now it's my pleasure to bring up the Secretary of the Department of Environmental Protection, Jess Shirley.
Thank you, Governor Shapiro. For the last several months, DEP has heard from thousands of Pennsylvania residents who are concerned about the potential impacts of data centers in their communities during our open public comment periods during the permit process, or they reached out to the agency through other channels, including social media. At DEP, our role when it comes to data centers is to review the necessary permit applications and conduct inspections as we would any other large-scale development. Data center projects touch multiple programs that DEP oversees, from stormwater and erosion control to sewage planning, safe drinking water, and storage tanks. The Shapiro administration is committed to being open and transparent about data center projects and is launching DEP's new Data Center Permit Tracker, along with the previously released DCED Data Center Planning Toolkit for local governments. To the people of Pennsylvania, Governor Shapiro and the Department of Environmental Protection have heard you, and we are using the tools that we have available to address your concerns. You have highlighted real, valid concerns about the impacts of hyperscale data center development that they could have on your communities, utility bills, and the environment. These concerns include energy costs, noise pollution, and water usage. The governor's grid requirements mandates that developers bring their own energy source, provide open, transparent communication with local communities, hire and train local workers, and enter into meaningful community benefit agreements that invest in local priorities, meet the highest standards for environmental protection, including strict water conservation requirements. And for that agreement, data center developers will have their permits reviewed but not issued until all local land use approvals are in hand. If a developer chooses to not follow the grid requirements, DEP will not even review their permit applications until all local land use approvals are granted. Those permits will also not be sequenced or issued when their reviews are completed, but rather they'll receive their permits once all necessary environmental permits are complete and will be packaged together and issued at the same time. I want to make it clear, our hope is that all data center developers will agree to the grid requirements and work with us as part of the permitting process. Those that do will have their permits reviewed as they submit them, but not before they are approved by the local municipalities. For those that choose not to, we will not review your permit applications until all local land use approvals are obtained, and then we will review all permits at once. DEP will continue to work to protect Pennsylvania's air, land, and water, and ensure local input from the people who actually live in these communities is emphasized during the permitting process. I would now like to introduce John Matthew Smith, the Hampden Township Commissioner, to discuss more about the local role in determining the appropriateness of data center development in a given community.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you, Secretary Shirley, and thank you, Governor Shapiro, for giving communities like Hampton Township a seat at the table. As a result of the governor's executive order, a data center developer must obtain local approvals before the Commonwealth will issue its own permits. Simply put, if a community doesn't approve the project, the state won't approve the project either. This is how government should work, state and local governments working together to protect our communities. When we created Hampton's ordinance, we tried to put real enforceable protections in place for things like the environment, energy costs, transparency, jobs, and community involvement. What Governor Shapiro is doing takes many of these same concerns and addresses them at the state level. This gives communities like Hampton Township another layer of protection while still allowing it to make decisions locally. That's really what local control is about. Development is fine, but the community gets to set reasonable rules for what happens in its own backyard. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. David Sanko, Executive Director of PSATS. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you very much. Thanks, Dave.
You know, data centers have quickly become one of the most significant issues facing Pennsylvania local communities. Township meetings have been filled to capacity with residents seeking information and sharing concerns about these proposed projects. Some even have had to move to larger spaces. Over the past couple of years, local officials have invested significant time in learning about data centers and learning about their potential impacts. Many participated in PSATS training that we offered, and some traveled to functioning facilities in other states just to gain a firsthand knowledge of the opportunities and challenges that these projects present. That work is paying off. Communities are carefully evaluating proposals, asking informed questions, making thoughtful decisions based on local circumstances. And some projects are moving forward where they make sense. You know, everything fits somewhere, but everything does not fit everywhere. Today's announcement is important because it reinforces the fundamental principle that land use decisions are best made at the local level by the officials who know their community, understand local conditions such as geography and public safety capacities, and are accountable to the residents that they serve. As a former local government official, Governor Shapiro understands the importance of local decision-making and the value of a strong partnership between state and local governments who all serve the same constituents. You know, I've been around Harrisburg through 8 governors, and they all talked the talk about cooperating with local governments. But this governor, with today's executive order, is walking the walk by directing his cabinet not to issue permits before local leaders have had all their questions answered and make a decision. Governor, on behalf of the Pennsylvania's Township and all local governments across the Commonwealth, thank you for your advocacy and leadership in prioritizing local decision-making. With that, I'm going to introduce Devon Robinson from the NRDC. Devon?
Thank you, Dave.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dewan Robinson, and I am the Managing Director of Place-Based Advocacy for Climate and Energy with the Natural Resources Defense Council. I lead a team at NRDC of state and regional policy advocates all across the country. And in every single state that I work in, data centers soak up the political oxygen, and cities and states are scrambling to develop solutions. And that's why I am very proud to stand here today with Governor Shapiro, because you are taking initiative and helping to show true leadership on this issue with a very smart, very innovative approach to the data center problems that communities are facing. Left unchecked, data centers and the AI boom will strain our energy grid. It will increase fossil fuel pollution. It will drive up energy bills for Pennsylvania families. one of the most significant ways to lower energy bills today is to require data centers to bring more of their own clean energy to power their facilities and to do it faster. And this EO puts us down that path and helps us to fight climate change along the way, which is a great bonus. And Governor, I'd also be remiss if I didn't also briefly mention a highlight of your second aspect of your grid principles. In many ways, we do not know the full environmental toll that data centers have on communities. And as such, I am so glad that you are focused on increasing transparency and ensuring that communities have a real voice in this process. So I am very thankful to Governor Shapiro, to your administration, for your leadership in holding data centers to a higher standard, and for your partnership with NRDC as we work to provide clean, affordable, and reliable energy in communities all across Pennsylvania. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next, I will invite up to the stage Patrick Cicero for the Pennsylvania Utility Law Project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Duan. Thank you, Governor. My name is Patrick Cicero. I serve as of counsel at the Pennsylvania Utility Law Project. At the Pennsylvania Utility Law Project, our work seeks to ensure that Pennsylvanians experiencing poverty have access to safe, reliable, and affordable utility service. This has always been difficult, now more than ever. What we're seeing today is a compounding threat. Rising energy bills driven by data center load growth and a regulatory system that cannot move fast, but for too long has also been tilted against communities and consumers. In 2025, nearly 290,000 Pennsylvanians had their electric service shut off for non-payment because they could not afford to pay their bill. That is a 14% increase over 2024. Our office represents families who are one bill away from losing their heat in November or their energy source in July. A young family watching their utility bill gets more expensive every single year, not because they're using more, but because of decisions that have been made far away from their homes. Our office estimates that in the last 18 months, bills have gone up for the average family with average usage $175. This is just a result of the energy increases caused by PJM. You can double that if you want to count the poles and wires distribution increases that have been approved at the Public Utility Commission. Our system is broken. This EO begins to fix that. Not only is energy unaffordable, it is increasingly scarce. We have a multi-billion-dollar price increase and less reliable grid. This is exactly why the action taken today matters. Energy affordability, transparency, workforce development, environmental protection. Those four pillars say something simple. If you want the Commonwealth's tax benefits, if you want expedited permitting, interconnection, you need to be responsible. You don't get a free ride on the back of everyday Pennsylvanians. We cannot have a system where billion-dollar companies get economic windfalls and a grandmother in Pennsylvania gets stuck paying the electricity bill. This is where the PUC comes in. It needs to be vigilant and ensure that all costs caused by data centers are paid for by data centers. This should include a requirement that data centers contribute to the universal service programs that keep low-income families connected to essential utility service. To be clear, we should welcome community-led investment. We should welcome community-determined economic development. We must also ensure that development for data centers does not lead to economic regression for Pennsylvania communities and families. The executive order does just that, is another step in balancing the scale on behalf of the communities in which we all live. I appreciate the governor for taking this decisive and fair action. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce my friend and the chairman of our Public Utility Commission, Stephen DeFrank.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Hello, my name is Steve DeFrank, and I have the great honor and privilege of serving as chairman of the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission. I want to thank Governor Shapiro for bringing us all together today and taking this very important step that he's about to take. Our grid in Pennsylvania is at a pivotal moment. The decisions we make will affect generations for decades to come. It will affect the reliability of this grid as well as the affordability of this grid. At the Public Utility Commission, our priorities are clear: maintaining reliability while protecting affordability for the existing customers on that grid. Recently, earlier this year at the commission, we took steps to implementing a large load tariff, a model large load tariff. And we believe this is the next step to that. We said at the time that was only the beginning. That was only the first step in making sure the cost causers of infrastructure upgrades are paying for those. What that large load tariff did was it suggested contributions to the Universal Service Fund. It requires significant deposits to be made to hopefully weed out some of those speculative developers that the governor spoke of. But again, that's just the first step. We have a lot more work to do here. Currently, and part of the budget from 2 years ago, the General Assembly passed, we are looking at load forecasts now and how those load forecasts are being submitted to PJM. Are they accurate forecasts? Because we know if we have inaccurate load forecasts, that could lead to increased costs to our consumers throughout the PJM footprint. We're also focused on one basic principle of fairness, and that is growth pays for growth. Pennsylvania families and small businesses should not be asked to subsidize infrastructure needed to serve some of the largest energy users in the world. Additionally, we have to realize that our utility systems, our sectors are becoming more and more complementary. We're using natural gas more to create electricity than we ever did before. And we have to realize as we're building out that infrastructure, we have to be cognizant of that, the use of natural gas and the role that that's playing in some of the development here. Additionally, the governor's executive order calls for clean uses of power as well, and we also support that. As I said, we're transforming our grid, and we have to get this right, because if we don't get this right now, it's going to be much more difficult to recoup some of those costs that are being paid. I applaud the governor again for bringing all the key parties here together for this executive order. Economic development and consumer protection are not competing goals. They're complementary goals, and our responsibility is to make sure we create a framework that delivers both. This will require collaboration across government, regulators, consumer advocates, utilities, customers, and our regional and federal partners. Again, the Commission looks forward to doing our part as an independent regulator, supporting responsible growth while protecting the reliability and affordability of our existing ratepayers. And with that, I would turn the microphone back over to the governor, and thank you again.
Thanks, Chairman.
Appreciate
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman DeFrank. I'm going to sign the executive order, and then I'll return to the podium to answer some questions. Before I take those questions, I do just want to say a special thanks to several leaders who helped us reach this day. I want to say a special thank you to my executive Deputy Chief of Staff, Amanda Warren, my Deputy Chief of Staff. We're going to clap for Amanda, Rosie, I think. My Deputy Chief of Staff, Sam Robinson. Appreciate you very much, Sam. My Deputy Policy Secretary, Jacob Finkel, is just a font of knowledge. One of our Deputy General Counsels, Jacob Boyer. We're incredibly grateful to each and every one of them, and including many voices on the outside, and I see him here wearing his signature hat. I want to thank Rob Baer for being a constant and strong voice for the working people here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We appreciate you, and we hear them as well, and they're reflected in this executive order. And of course, I want to thank each member who spoke here today. With that, Rosie, you'll let me know what questions to answer here.
Governor, given that there's been a lot of progress on a lot of these projects since you announced grid. Do you wish that perhaps this EO could have come earlier, or at least some of these changes could have come earlier, given what you've said has been kind of the bad scenario you didn't want to see happen?
Well, as I said, Tom, there are more than 100 speculative projects that are out there right now, and only 5 even have permits to move forward, and none are actually operational. This executive order comes on the heels of me back in February announcing the grid requirements, strengthened through the voices of the people of Pennsylvania who I've listened to. In addition to that, what you have seen during that interim time period are a whole bunch of developers who have come here to Pennsylvania who've tried to run roughshod over our communities. And then finally, you've seen a Senate of Pennsylvania that's refused to act on regulatory policy that the House has passed. And so that leads us to today, where I have no other choice than but to take this executive action to protect the good people of Pennsylvania from these predatory developers and from these projects that would negatively impact our communities.
Lauren? You just described sort of how things have changed. Do you regret Pennsylvania's...
I'm sorry.
Do you regret Pennsylvania's approach to data centers up until now? And do you think that approach contributed at all to an environment with the concerns that communities are having and the problems that you articulated?
Again, there are only about 5 projects that have even received permits to go forward. The problem is there's 100 projects or so that are wreaking havoc on our communities that are never going to be built. What we're doing today is taking concrete action to listen to the voices of the people, to put local leaders back in charge of their communities, and to make very, very clear what the rules of the road are to be able to do business here in Pennsylvania. This executive order represents the most stringent requirements in the entire country. And my word to developers is you better follow these requirements, otherwise you shouldn't plan to do business here.
Jack?
So your office is implementing these requirements now. Does your office have the ability and power to do so without buy-in from the legislature?
Without question, yes. I'm utilizing my legal authority as governor, and understand that if you want to build a project here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, you will now be subject to a consent order, which will be a legally binding agreement between the developer and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, with penalties should you not meet each and every requirement under grid, including the requirements set forth by the local government.
Last question, James.
Governor, we heard Senator Malone and local leaders last week in Lancaster County back the moratorium option for municipalities. Is that something that you would back?
What I back is what I signed here today, which is the most stringent legal requirements in the entire country, setting out clear rules of the road and making clear to developers, if you do not follow grid, we don't want your business, we don't want you here, you should look elsewhere. Thank you all very, very much.